claimed he's not sitting next to Neil, so
Yeah.
I guess you're stuck.
I like the pole position. Yeah. You can tell I've done this before.
Alright, I think we have almost everybody here, right? Okay. So we don't have mics, so you guys are gonna have to be, we're gonna have to keep the, for at least for now, the side conversation. So I just want to add a little context here. So I was, a couple weeks ago, I was actually in the Bay Area at Product Leader Summit, which was hosted by Walmart and Sam's Club, and met 120 product leaders from all over the country, in some cases the world, from New Zealand, from Spain. And so there's obviously a lot of talk about AI and how does AI impact the future of product management. So I thought it'd be great to kind of start with a panel. And so what I'm going to do is just have, I'm sure you guys know a lot of these folks up here on our stage, but I'm just going to kind of give everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves and say a few things before we kind of get into it. So go ahead, Neil.
Hi, I'm Neil Barron. I work with product, I'm a consultant. I work with product teams to basically turn them into revenue growth engines. And there's a lot of talk about the role of product as making great products. That's true, but real strong product teams also drive revenue. So I help them take their great products and figure out how they convert it into revenue. I also am on the board of advisors for the Boston Product Management Association. How many of you here are based in Boston? Okay, just no surprise, everybody, except for you.
Except for me, I'm the outsider.
We have actually 5 leaders from the BPMA, Boston Product Management Association here. If you put your hands up. If you're based in Boston and you're in product, you should be part of the BPMA. And if you're managing teams, we should talk. We have a special forum of no charge, a Boston Product Executive Forum that we run monthly for people who are managing teams, directors, VPs, CPOs, and that's been quite popular. We have about 20 to 30 execs at each one of those sessions. So I am delighted to be here. And David?
Hi, good morning. I'm David Owen. How many of you are a veteran or know a veteran? Well, if they've had any surgery here in the country in one of the veterans hospital, there's an 80% chance the safety of their care was managed by Live Data, the company I'm chief product officer for. We're installed in 80% of the ORs in Veterans Administration and have a patented method of doing a patient safety timeout to ensure the right limb is being operated on, and many other aspects of safety and also efficiency within the operating room. I just joined Live Data 2 months ago to now help them add AI to the product line and bring the products to the commercial market. My background has been really entirely in AI. I actually started with a company called Kurzweil Applied Intelligence, a graduate of MIT, where we sit here today, back in 1987. By 1992, we had installed our speech recognition and knowledge base system in 10% of the emergency departments in the US. It's been a wild ride. I've been through, I think I can count 5 definitive hype cycles of AI. This is the one where we're going to break out to the this is it. I mean, I have to tell you, graduating from college and going to work for them, I thought we'd be where we are today in 1990. So I feel like finally we're going to get to build the products we were imagining back then.
Wow.
So I'm super happy to be participating today.
That's great, incredible.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name's Ed Arnold, and I'm rounding out the elder statesman. Just point out the obvious. I'm a former VP of product at Forrester Research. I also started a SaaS company called Leverage Point, which was based here in Cambridge out of the Monitor Group. I was also on the board of the Boston Product Management Association many moons ago. my expertise is in value-based pricing, and I coach product and sales teams on developing and implementing that. I also, if you're interested, I publish a weekly newsletter on Substack called The Valorizer, if you want to learn more. So great to be here. AI has made a lot of changes to how companies go to market with products. I'm here to talk and to learn more about that.
Great. Well, thank you. As somebody who's done some work with pricing, it feels like it's a black art of some science and a lot of art and figuring this stuff out. So
I know the
great perspective.
spells.
Yeah. So I'm going to start out with kind of a pretty straightforward question, which is like, how do you all think that AI is going to impact product management? There's a lot of stuff out there in the media about how, you know, product management is dead is one perspective. You know, Andrew Ng says we're going to need 2 product managers for every engineer. So, you know, both ends of the spectrum, right? We're hearing different things. So I want to kind of start off with kind of a general state of product management and AI. And I could start with you, Neil.
Sure.
And we can kind of get some perspectives from.
So for me, I'm not an MIT educated AI programming guru, but what I am an expert in is looking at industry trends and technology adoption curves. And one thing that we look at is there's some of us who may remember the birth of the internet or when the internet boomed in the 1990s. And you went through this amazing hype cycle where old business models didn't apply, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And it was all about eyeballs and this and that, and if you're worried about profits and business plans, you were a loser because that was for losers. And there was all this amazing hype about the internet, and every CEO in the world, even the local pizza place, was worried about how the internet was going to impact their business. And then in April of 2000, boom, it just came crashing down in about 2 days. And people realized that, wait a second, there's nothing there. And then out of the ashes came companies like Google. We had eBay take off, E-Trade take off. Several of the companies, Facebook came out of the ashes. And so one of the things is when we look at AI in product management, I think we have to take a step back and see where are we in the hype cycle. Is there anything there?
Yeah.
And I think as product managers, we have an enormous contribution by understanding the market problems that we can use AI to solve. Versus just saying, hey, we have AI and we have agentic AI and it can do this, it can do that. And Salesforce is using it for like 50% of its work is being done with AI now. Well, wait a second, what problems is it really solving?
Right. It sounds like you're saying in some ways the fundamentals are really still what matters, right?
Absolutely. Fundamentals of product management absolutely still matter when it comes to AI. AI, just like the internet didn't suspend the rules, didn't change the rules of the game, AI is not going to change the rules of the game. We have to apply the rules of the game to AI in order to make AI successful.
So I won't take offense to what Neil said because I worked for one of those consultancies back in the day, in the hype cycle.
Yes.
So
I think you guys created the concept of the
well, it was
Isn't it the Gartner set?
no. This was
It was
the
the Gartner
this was
cycle,
this
yeah.
was Diamond Cluster. We were the killer app company, and so you know later if you want to have a beer, I'll tell you like what happened to that. But yeah, absolutely. But to Neil's point, I think MIT NANDA project did a interesting study on the state of Gen I in business in 2025, and to your point, only 5% of the corporate AI projects actually made any return investment. 95% of them have been misses or pilots or things like that. And so that speaks to, hey, are we heading towards that next sort of, burst of the bubble? Now, if you remember, and I think some of us here are old enough, we're working in that, one of the things that killed the dot-com boom is that it was all e-commerce, pushed e-commerce heavy, and there was also something called Y2K going on. Remember Y2K?
I remember Y2K, yeah.
And the company I was working for at the time, I mean, there were IT departments were throwing tons of money into that to get prepared for that, and at the same time riding the wave because the shareholders were pushing that. Shareholders are pushing companies to invest in AI, but once the year 2000 came, that IT spending stopped.
Yep.
And so, like you said, out of the ashes came companies that had better market fit and market focus. But the ones that, and I focus more on the B2B side of things, but I thought was really interesting, Salesforce kind of came up during that thing.
Yep.
And one of the things that I think what will happen is that those on the B2B side in software, those who focus on sort of very specialized use cases and really lean into those for AI, solving those particular problems are the ones that are going to succeed.
Well, it's solving a problem.
Yes.
As opposed to, we have this fabulous LLM or whatever, and isn't it great? It's what problem are you solving? What's the use case?
Yeah.
Is it a real problem? As the folks from Pragmatic Institute talk about, is it pervasive?
Mhm.
Is it an urgent problem? Is there a willingness to pay? Those fundamentals
Yeah.
around AI and the problems that AI solve still are intact.
So,
David,
yeah,
I
I
wanna give you a chance.
agree. The fundamentals are still there, and where I actually think we're entering a golden age for product management. You referenced Andrew Ng spoke at Y Combinator. Andrew Ng is the CTO and founder of DeepMind, now owned by Google, and he was speaking at Y Combinator in June. You can catch the video online. And he said, my engineers just came to me and said, the old model, the Scrum model of one product owner to manage 7 to 8 engineers' work is not going to work anymore. We're going to need 2 per engineer. That's what they.
I like that ratio.
Well, I like that ratio. But if you imagine that, I've read where 40% of software features go unused.
That's right.
We're unbelievably wasteful as an industry, not as product management, of course, but that's what our goal is, to reduce that amount of waste of what occurs generally in engineering. Now, if we don't apply better decisioning on understanding the problem and the solution that has the right fit at the right price, we're just going to mushroom all those features that aren't going to be used by anyone. So right now, I think that we always talk about the hype cycle a lot, but as I've been through in the internet age, there's other cycle that I'm not as clear on, but there's a wave that's happening right now that's just getting the infrastructure in. Most of the dollars going to AI is infrastructure right now. Okay, so what I build as an app today is not going to be as powerful as one I can build 3 years from now. The next level is going to be the developer tools that sit on top of this infrastructure. The wave of applications where I think those of you who do product management in terms of developer tools, you're going to get in that second wave. But I think for most of us who deal in applications for humans to use or bots to use, because I think our customers may not just be humans anymore, they may be agents as well. That wave is yet to come. So we're not late to the game. That's the message of hope I want to leave with you, is I think our time is going to come. What I'm focused right now with my team is we may be able to build applications 2 years from now in such a fraction of the time as it would take for us to do it now. I'm more interested in us applying AI to accelerate our innovation and control it and have better signal to noise, reduce that 40% and be very, very fast at responding to market needs and customer needs versus coming out with the latest bobble of gee whiz AI feature.
I think
Questions?
I
Yeah.
just want to build on what you guys are saying, and specifically what you just said, David, about the role of product in knowing about the problem and directing the development efforts being so critical. Not everybody is thinking that way about the role of product in AI. I know of one large company whose offices you can see out this window, who have decided they don't need product managers anymore. With AI, the engineers will be great prompters. They understand the technology better, and they'll just create all of the features based on working with LLMs. And I think everything you're saying shows how exactly backwards that is. I think if you think about who is in a position to understand where value lies for the customer in the traditional Scrum team, it's somewhere between product and UX. It's not the engineers.
So yeah, I'd like to respond to that is that the generative AI can certainly help in terms of you doing market research. I mean, I'm very skeptical of any results and I double check and
Sure.
look at the sources
Trust
and
but
all,
verify.
and educate my team to do that. But here's the thing is that AI doesn't have ubiquitous eyes and ears in customer environments to observe. So I was actually, my background is actually as an anthropology major, undergraduate. And one of the things that we were taught as well, sociology uses a lot of surveys and all. One of the big things that I thought was unique, I think it is, unique to anthropology is that observation is such an important thing. So you don't just ask the customer what they want. What did Steve Jobs say? The customer doesn't know what they want. We tell them what they want. But that's after doing a lot of observation.
Right.
So right now, until Optimus is ubiquitous in every hospital and home, able to observe what's going on, you're not going to get an accurate reflection without going out as a human observing other humans.
And to build on that, I had the opportunity, I don't know if you're familiar with Clay Christensen.
Oh, yeah.
I had a chance to work with Clay, I got to know Clay, I reviewed the jobs to be done methodology before it was published. One of the things that Clay said that really stuck with me is one good in-depth client interview is worth 1,000 quantitative surveys.
Yeah.
And so to build on what he's saying here is, we can say, well, I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna do a survey of 1,000 people. Well, you don't get the emotion, you don't understand the intent, you don't understand the urgency. However, if you sit down with a handful and have the right kind of conversation, not about, well, you like yellow or blue, but really understand the emotions behind what they're thinking, that's how you as product managers can continue to thrive by having that critical skill set of identifying and hunting for market problems to be solved.
Well, I think one of the most powerful experiences I've had as a product manager is when you do user software testing and you watch someone try to use your software and you can't talk to them.
Right.
Right?
Right.
It is the most painful thing there is. So
Yeah.
that's that. But like getting back to some of the things we're talking around, what does AI mean to the day-to-day life of a product manager, right? I mean, I think it's true that every professional role is adopting AI at the individual level, right? At the consumer level. Everyone is using an LLM in one form or another, whether it's to write or to research or what have you. And I think what's happening, at least in this first wave, a lot of the AI adoption is happening at that worker level. That people are not being told to use AI. They're using AI because they want to keep their jobs. And when I was doing a little bit of background research on this, and I was looking, well, what kind of tools do product managers use? Oh my God, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of different tools out there that people are figuring it out on their own. And in fact, they're building their own sort of toolkits and doing that. And that's what's driving the growth of the adoption of LLMs, are individuals, not businesses. Again, only 5% of those are successful at the corporate level.
Mhm.
And that's kind of really interesting to me, about where that's gonna go.
But I think has a lot to do with how early we are
Yeah.
in the phase. The tool level hasn't been built out fully yet, the
Yeah.
application level. I mean, we are seeing tools, we are seeing applications, but
Absolutely.
it is nothing compared to when all this infrastructure, data centers comes online and actually pushing some of these LLMs onto the phone, which will become that you have it on the edge of the network to do some serious stuff. That's the architecture that Apple Intelligence is following. If you've started to use the latest Siri, it will ask you permission to go off and use ChatGPT. They're going to continue to build the intelligence in Siri on the device, so it has to call out less and less and less to
And just for-
ChatGPT.
Yeah, let me just, and so following up from that, there was a
Can I say
fascinating.
something before the topic, right? So just quickly, we talked about product managers being obsolete, right? So one of the things that's interesting is like companies like Facebook that are looking to their product managers to only optimize their return on ad spend, right, or return on ad revenue, are able to do those 1,000 data points like that. It costs them nothing to start recording clicks and mouse movements and so on and so forth. And then they can run A/B tests using AI, and they can just close that entire loop. So they are going to end up eliminating all of those product managers that were trying to optimize when the data collection is so easy. Just wanted to add a story about Microsoft, which is definitely forcing their software developers to use AI. It's a requirement, and they'll come in and enforce it in a department, and after some amount of time, I don't know what they're doing with the data, but half of the department gets eliminated because they've either trained the LLM to code effectively, or they've used the LLM to assess who are the more effective pair programmers who are delivering at a high rate. So it's very interesting what's happening. But I also agree with the other point about if the engineers are that more productive in domains which we can't easily observe, like not advertising, but in any other domain, you're gonna need a lot more product managers because the engineering teams are so much more effective.
I think that's a great point, because that's the industry where, AI is really being adopted, right? It's in media and it's in technology. There are a lot of industries where AI adoption is much lower. Like,
Well, I'm in healthcare, and the precision requirements
Yeah.
are much higher than in many industries.
Yeah.
And also, healthcare is messy. I mean, you go in and wander around a hospital, you see a lot of variation in what happens.
So maybe one of the answers to, well, how's it gonna change the job might be, well, it depends, right?
Yeah.
You can use the classic consulting answer.
Yeah.
But it really depends on what industry you're really in.
I think industry and also the nature of the product management you're doing. Are you building 0 to 1 products where there's a lot of unknown unknowns, where using a quantitative method like a survey is not going to give you the rich insights? You have to go back to observational stuff, or really get deep with your users and do interviews.
It was,
A
Go
question
ahead, Pamela,
around
yeah.
that, in the realm of like the impact on PM. Like, I do agree that, yes, you still need people to validate the what and why. They need to be solving a real problem, and you need to solve a problem that's monetizable and actually sell. So the fundamental skill set is still there, but I'm wondering, are there additional competencies that we should all be
Great segue.
developing? Like we're all like on our free time, because like personally, I'm spending a lot of time learning new tools, and it's hard to keep up with every new model that's coming up, because while yes, this is very similar to the .com like bubble and burst, the cadence is unprecedented. Like we're talking in a matter of weeks, new things are coming up, not even months anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you have any perspective on new things. Yes, keep the fundamental, but any new
That's
things
a
that should be
great,
added to our
and that's actually a great lead into the next thing I was going to talk about, right? We talked about how the fundamentals are important. So now I want to talk a little bit about, how do we, so if we do believe that we do actually need more product managers to really go deep in understanding problems, understanding users, for those kinds of industries and domains where we're not just optimizing on a bounded problem space, right? what are the skills and like what are the things that we need to develop as product managers, and what are the skills we need to develop in our societies, right, to prepare people for these jobs? And I just want to add one anecdote before I turn it over to you guys. So if you guys are familiar with Palantir, and I won't get into the moral implications of Palantir, but there is this concept of the forward deployed engineer, which I think a lot of you were sort of alluding to. And this is the idea of an engineer going and sitting with a customer, observing them, understanding their pain points, their jobs to be done, and then building the solution with the customer. It's also something we're aspiring to do at my company, Carbine. And so, what are the skills that are important for existing PMs like us and product leaders to develop, but also the new skills that we want, like, you know, people who are entering product management or coming up, students.
So there was a fascinating BCG article on the deployment of AI. And after looking at projects successful and unsuccessful, they determined that 70% of the project's success was people and processes. The 20%, it becomes your platform and your technology. 10% was the algorithms. What that means is that the people skills to be able to work cross-functionally, to be able to do process design, you know, those softer skills aren't going away, instead of becoming even more important. At the same time, I went back and found a paper from BCG on the deployment of the internet, and they said 70% was people and process, 20% was the platform, and 10% was the other technology. So once again, it hasn't changed in 30 years, but it's building those softer skills, the ability to resolve conflicts, the ability to listen actively, to communicate effectively and concisely. Those are all critical skills that are even becoming more so.
So when people encounter a new technology, again, I've studied anthropology and been through these 5 hype cycles of AI, they bring to the new technology whatever paradigm that they're accustomed to. And that's typically how they first engage it. So most people, when they first engage the prompt, they treat it like a search bar.
Mm-hmm.
And they ask questions that are very basic search. That's only using maybe 1% of what this technology is. So skills, yes, skills, really learning good prompting skills, which not all prompting courses teach the critical thinking skills to evaluate what you're getting, like what are the known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns. So things you can do to develop your critical thinking skills in whatever domain you're in is going to be very helpful. Using it as, so I think for product managers, there's 2 things to get really good at. One is the market research, and the other is to use it as a coach. It can coach you in terms of these interpersonal skills. You can do, role playing. You can describe the persona that you're going to go interview,
Mm-hmm.
and say, hey, will you role play with me? And it can help you develop those softer skills as you like. But I think I think the wonderful thing for us is that if we focus on our fundamentals and using AI for the enhancing our fundamentals, it's going to be like having a superpower.
I love that, Dave. I do. I think the other thing I would add on that is really to have more of a strategic mindset, because that's what product managers do. They should think strategically about what the market opportunities are. So that means having sort of a broader view of what's happening there. And one thing in particular I would pay attention to is the shift from sort of the SaaS model delivering value. We're talking about software here primarily.
Yeah.
To a native AI-driven competitive set, different tech stack, right, in some respects, and other capabilities. Really learn what's going on there, I think. Really understanding who the next competitors are going to be, because they're probably not the ones you're dealing with now.
Yeah.
So there's one other technique I would suggest. This is in that realm of skating to where the puck is going to be, not where it is now. And that is, how many of you here have used ChatGPT's thinking model 5 thinking model? Okay, so you know it's less immediate. Sometimes it can take 10, 15 minutes to get you a response. Imagine that the quality of what it's going to do for you is going to get better and better, and these time frame, it may take longer to go do some tasks. And I wish I could reference who it was. Heard someone speak recently and said, think about, again, 2-3 years from now, your workforce will be a combination of humans who are working for you, and you may have bots, agents working for you. So I was talking with my CEO last night, and I found I'm doing the same thing as well. I'm thinking about my day. I'm thinking, what are the 3 or 4 tasks I could give an agent to do today that's in between? So before I go into a meeting, I prompt up some research I need done, and I go attend my meeting. It takes 10 minutes to do it. I come back, 20 minutes after it's done, and then I have time to work on refine what it's done, then send it on another task. I think we'll be doing more and more of that. And so thinking of how you structure your workday, and the way I think of these agents is, I'm a leader in it's now called Scouting America, was the Boy Scouts. And I can't tell you how similar I find prompting to teaching young teenage boys to do a new task, except it's a lot smarter. It has all the information in the world, but my expectation of the quality I'm going to get back is about what I expect out of a 12-year-old boy.
It's interesting.
And then and then the plan on coaching it accordingly. But if you structure your day, it's like, okay, I've got this 12-year-old here who's incredibly intelligent, and how am I going to make it productive alongside me throughout my day?
Yeah. When I talk to engineers, I'll give you a second. Just give me 1 second. When I talk to engineering leaders, a lot of them are telling me they're treating things like Claude Code like a very eager intern, right?
Yeah.
And so just like you would coach an employee, whether it's a pair, right, for pair programming, or coach a junior employee, you have to make sure you give them the context and the guardrails to make sure that those AI agents are operating within the parameters that you need them to get a high quality response.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
In 3 companies where I've worked, they brought me in specifically to do transformations of the product group. And one of the biggest things was, what are the things that we're going to stop doing? What are the things that we're going to give back to somebody else? Technology, sales, whatever. Or how do I empower them to go about doing this themselves? So we talked a lot about what things you should be better at and what things you should keep. What are the things that AI is going to be really good at that you can give away?
Great segue, because I was actually going to have the next thing I wanted to bring up is like, where do humans excel and where does AI excel? And I think we've talked about this a little bit, so love to. And actually, I'm going to start with Ed this time.
Sure.
And work backwards. So he
Well,
gets some time.
today AI has excelled at very simple, complex, very simple, not one-off administrative tasks, right? It's mainly a productivity tool for folks. In the future, because of the capabilities, it's going to be more of a thought partner, right? You query it. I've seen examples where people ask a bunch of questions, they look at the response and they say, okay, well, what question should I ask to make this better? I mean, it's that sort of deep learning is really, what it will be good at. So what could, I think the other examples of having it just crunch through a lot of data points, because, I mean, we've all been product management, right? How many people have had debates about what is useful in a product, right? Just amongst the folks in that team. I mean, Bruce deals with that all the time, right? So you see that sort of thing where you can have instant data and say, well, this is really what the reality is. So I think any of those sort of time-intensive, sort of brute force sort of things, to me, that's kind of where it is now. As far as where it goes goes from there, I'm gonna have to
I have
look
an
at
example
doing.
of one of those that I just love, that Christina Ricci, the author of Radical Focus, gave me. She said, have it go through all of your Zendesk tickets, because there's a million of them, and you're never gonna read them. So have it do the analytical work you're not gonna do, because it's just undoable. But don't stop there. Have it surface like the most common complaints or issues or use cases, and have it also say, these are some representative people you should then go talk to. Because all it can get out of that is the what, and you need to know the why. So go and talk to them and do like David said, the qualitative interview. But you don't have to talk to everybody, you only need to talk to a representative sample. So that's a really good complementary.
Great example. So actually, it's, I'm glad you said that. So, you two both kind of.
Can I answer that
Oh, yeah,
last
please.
question?
Yeah.
So, because I don't think we're getting at what should we stop doing.
Yeah, let's hear it. Yeah.
So, an area that I'll say we haven't released it yet out of our product management group, but when I arrived at Live Data, one of our product managers, Chris Eaton, had created a custom GPT he called a healthcare solution strategist, and he put in it all kinds of documentation that we've created about the product, so that we'd enable our salespeople, instead of us creating umpteen slide presentations and deliver them, the goal here is to make an intelligent agent that they can interrogate directly, because it's like, okay, I'm at the customer, they're asking me this question, I don't know the answer, does my custom GPT have that answer? Because even if I produce that training deck and I deliver it to them, they're gonna forget when they're on site, in the flow, focusing on the customer, buying process. I'd rather them focus on that than remembering every detail of the
That's
product.
great.
So that would be an example what we would stop doing. We wouldn't have to produce, like I said, a slide deck. It could be just from the release notes would be good, and I wouldn't have to also produce a slide deck. Because it'll produce a slide deck on the fly for them if they want.
Just
Ben,
a
yeah.
real quick question on that. It's easy to do it at the beginning, like most things, to go about sticking the new data in.
Then you gotta prune it.
But how do you keep it from looking at bad old data? Have you considered that?
That's
Because
why
it's-
we haven't released it until we come up with a hygiene plan, if you will.
Yeah.
That we're gonna go and prune it out. We've done this with, one company I was with, we had to do this with SKUs every year. The least used SKUs, we had to call 10% of them every year. So we would have a process for quarterly or whatever. For instance, our product roadmap, we touch the product roadmap every month. We sunset the old one. Every product roadmap has a sell-by date on it. Instead of the date we created it, we put the date it expires on it. So if you go and find it, now if that's in our custom GPT, the GPT will know, oh, you need to go, you don't have the latest roadmap here. So there are various methods we'll use to do it, and this is why we haven't released it yet to our sales force.
I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so in our product, we've created an LLM that's specific to our product, and we went through the effort of creating a RAG that is based off of documentation across our company, and what we're hitting is kind of twofold. One is what you're talking about of how do you keep that up to date, but then also as we think about the future of where AI is going, I have not been at a single company that is good at documentation, if I'm being honest. So how does product fit into that world? Is that product's job to maintain documentation, or is it just our job to create processes that help us maintain documentation? And how do we think about that, knowing that we all have our own specialties? So generative AI, whether it be ChatGPT or whatnot, is not going to be able to know about our company unless we're using standard things, and that's what we found. So anything proprietary, it's bad at because it doesn't know about it. So how do we think about that in our role in that document maintenance, so to speak?
Well, you have to have put it in, if you're using RAG, you have to put it or in the custom GPT, or yes, it won't know about it because it's proprietary.
Yeah, but like, how do you think products should be interacting with those knowledge bases, and what are skill sets? Do you think product needs to get better at documentation? Do we need to understand how different AIs are using that documentation so we structure it differently, or things along those
I
lines?
think you're hitting on really important things. Yeah, you know, talking about skill sets we need to learn is how does it? You know, one of the things that I do a lot, which is I call it ensemble prompting. I'll use 3 different, like Claude, Gemini, and well, actually 4, Copilot sometimes, and ChatGPT, and I'll give responses to each of them, get them to critique each other. So I think it can be really helpful in creating the documentation. You know, a lot of times what I see people do is they just give it one thing and say, here, create the document. I was creating a board deck recently. I had 71 slides of raw material. Needed to be, what, 20, you know, for the board. I didn't just give it to it and said, skinny it down. I said, okay, let's talk about what an outline should be. This is what I mean in terms of
Here's my
using
audience.
it. So, yeah,
Here's
here's
the
my
things I
audience.
care
It's
about.
angel type investors, not professional venture capitalists. Then the next step was to say, evaluate these slides and tell me where the gaps are. So then give it that, and then I filled in the gaps, and then I said, okay. I not only did I fill in gaps, but I found there were some semantic misunderstandings, and I fixed those. And then I went through one slide at a time, fed the slide back and it got better as I went through the process. So I think, yes, we do. I guess I think of product management as we do have overall responsibility of the product. And that includes the services, that whole experience of value that the customer maintains. Do we have to do those things? That depends on the company you're in. At least we own the responsibility to say, here's a gap between customer expectation or value and what we're delivering. If it's a small t-shirt side of effort, product manager, please just do it. If it's large, well then, okay, let's go look at the budget and see if we can outsource it or we need to hire staff to do it.
Did you have
Did we answer your question?
We're
Not
getting
really.
there. Not really, but I
Not
think
really.
it's because it doesn't exist yet, and that's okay.
Exactly,
It
I
is
think
kind
so.
of
I think you're asking the right
It
question.
depends kind of question to some
Yeah,
extent.
go
Yeah, I
ahead.
think we were talking earlier, I'm not sure if we stand there. All of those things that relate to how your product is used and perceived outside of the actual functionality that you create. Some folks might not think that's products, but all of those things actually make or break the success of your product. So as a product leader, I feel and take accountability for making sure that those things are available. Because if they're not, that comes back to me as a why do we have this gap or that? And it's because we didn't enable the right folks in the right way to take the message that we wanted. So one of the, I don't know if it's a debate so much is, in my opinion, in the way that I've tried to run our product teams we own everything. I am from the day we make a requirement to the day we sunset the product and you are a customer, you leave us. We are ultimately responsible for all of that, and my job is to make sure that when we have a gap, that we try to not necessarily fill it, to Dave's point, but that we are ensuring that it does get filled so that the perception that's out there is the one that we want on the product.
If it's okay, I'd love to switch gears a little bit. We have Ed here. So I want to talk a little bit about how does AI impact product definition and monetization and pricing? So, and specifically around B2B, right? There's a lot of talk right now about traditional B2B pricing is usually seat-based or license-based. And so I'd love to get your perspective, and obviously I have.
Yeah, I could talk about this for a long time. Just the real headlines is it's changing it. AI is changing B2B SaaS pricing quite a bit. And the headline is that, you know, the primary seat-based pricing metric is going away for a couple of reasons. Not that I was a big fan of it anyway. The reason why software uses seat-based license because it's easy and customers understand it, and at Leverage Point, that's how we sold it, right? You know, you just have to do what customers expect you to do. But there's a lot of problems with that, and that's why there's such a thing as value pricing. But what AI is doing is it's changing the economics of software. So where software's had really high margins of 80–90%, and the incremental cost of adding a user was like nearly zero, right? There were great profit margins. AI has cut those in half, okay? And why? It's because of the IT costs for running the LLMs. Every API call costs money, right? So if you're building on top of that, you know, so that's going to be another pressure for product managers, is really get that in line. So how are companies addressing that? Just really quick, one major way is to go back to an old type of pricing methodology, which is cost plus, and you may have heard it as usage. Right, so there's a lot of, so I think 3 out of 4 companies I heard recently in the software space has changed their pricing in the last year. And they've adopted usage because they had to. So that's where you have, and it comes in a lot of different flavors and forms. All right, so that's what's driving it. It's the economics are really driving that. Hopefully those economics will get better when all that new capacity comes online. That'll be really interesting to see, but I don't know. The other thing, and I think is very hopeful, is that there has also been companies adopting what's called outcome-based pricing, right? Now, outcome-based pricing is a form of value-based pricing. I know Neil and I can have a really good discussion about this, and I think that's really great news because it gets closer to the value prop. It's basically paying for results, and companies have started to do that. And you'll see that, you know, whether it's the number of, you know, service calls resolved, or the number of qualified leads, or whatever. And I think that's going to be something that product managers are going to really need to figure out, is what those outcomes are going to be. And I think in the mastermind session, that's what I'm going to suggest. What are those outcomes that you're going to be driving for in your particular product?
Gary?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
What's the difference between value-based pricing and outcome-based pricing?
Do you want
Great
to?
Sorry.
Yeah, and part of it is, in some ways, it's very similar. To be very honest, you know, focusing on value. Well, value is the outcomes you deliver. So in some cases, I see it as just a matter of semantics in terms of. But the interesting thing is, I'd love to talk to Ed offline about this. Is how do you measure those outcomes? And not only that, you know, value-based pricing has been around for 30 years. That's the concept, longer. But how do you track the value? How do you agree on the value? How do you share data around it? There's an awful lot of trust that has to be that, okay, we are going to share the number of calls we resolve, or revenue generated. Okay, is how much of that is the contribution of your product versus the fact I did a brilliant job, and how do we divide that up? So
Yeah, it's a deep topic. I'll just disagree slightly about
Sure.
the difference between outcome and value. I see an outcome as sort of fulfilling a KPI of some sort, like we're going to reduce the number of unresolved calls, right? Now, does that have what is a value impact? For a value-based pricing consultant, that impact has a direct line to profitability. How much more money did I make because I've used your product, right? And that can happen because I've reduced cost in some way, I'm not spending as much money, or I've improved top-line revenue, right? Attribution is always been the big, hairy issue, and it will be with outcomes pricing. That doesn't go away. But attribution it can be mitigated, can be managed, expectations can be set, and that's the difference. So I think what's nice about outcome is it gets you closer, much closer than the seat-based or the deal-based things.
on the other hand, you can't have value without having outcomes.
Absolutely.
So
Totally
in some
agree.
ways, they're in the same ballpark, if you will.
Yep.
But yeah, in order to have outcome, and basically what, to summarize what I think you're saying, Ed, which I agree with, is that outcomes lead to value. And by saying, all right, here's an outcome, we increased the number, or we decreased the unresolved calls.
Yeah.
What does that mean in terms of customer retention? What does customer retention mean in terms of increased revenue, among other things?
And it's
So-
a, you know, it's a hard thing to do. Let me just say, it is a hard thing to do. Yeah.
Just wanted to, we had to do this twice, so I'll just use an example, right? So, it might be helpful. We were selling autonomous robot lawnmowers.
Yep.
And you can sell them multiple ways, right? You just buy the equipment as a capital equipment, and then, you know, you can debate on the value. Or you could sell it as a lease, because we're replacing a person with an autonomous system, so maybe it's $3,500 a month. But the KPI-based model was, for every hour the system ran autonomously, you would pay us X. If you had to run it manually, you wouldn't pay us at all. Right? That would be very specific. Like,
Yeah.
moving from starting with value and then working your way directly down to
And there are examples of this in the pre-AI economy, right? So if you look at the way jet engines are
I
sold,
was just gonna
right?
say that, that's the classic
Yeah,
example.
like it's wings up time. Right?
Power by the hour.
Right, power by the hour. Like
It's
GE
a
sells
classic
aircraft
one.
engines that are instrumented, where they can know like how long what the flight time is. The downside of that is if you have a, you know, like I did some work with a team where they were working with aircraft engine manufacturers. They make a lot of money on service and support, but now if you have a defective aircraft engine, you're not making any revenue and you're spending a lot of money on support.
So I have three things to contribute to it. So I see, you know, outcome pricing is really a subset of value pricing.
Yeah.
If you're not pricing a product based on the value, it's time you start.
Thank you.
And it's just 101 product management. And whereas the outcomes is you're putting your money where your mouth is. Like if they don't actually get the value that you've calculated your price on, you're not going to make as much money. The second thing I would say is, in addition to more GPUs coming online that will help reduce the cost of the AI in your cost of goods sold, is this you know, smaller LLMs that run on the edge of the network. So right now we tend to use these big all-purpose chatbots and all for things, but they're, you know, we're looking at more you know, single purpose or more narrow purposed LLMs, and maybe multiple ones that, you know, one's really good at revenue cycle, another one's really good at measuring quality, and then you need to have an agent that can orchestrate
And
that.
not only-
So these kind of architectures are
track
coming.
and actually track it. You know,
And
that
actually
was
track
always the issue with value-based pricing. Well, okay, it was always used in a selling mode,
Right.
Now you can close that loop.
Right.
So then that's where my third point is going, is that it's very helpful, is that we're going to be able to, it's not just track, but create ever more complex outcome models.
Yeah.
And I see it about, if you kind of look at how derivatives evolved on Wall Street, I think we're going to be able to do outcome pricing that are on, you know, like a derivative level. Lots, like in healthcare, we have so many variables to track, and so we can, right now, a lot of times you can't parse the, you know, from a complete patient journey where the surgery went wrong, you know, it was, you know, where was it really attributable to? You're going to be able to really be able to micro identify these quality issues.
Gary?
I just had I had a question on the earlier point on the consumption-based pricing. I've got a couple of companies, we're putting Gen AI products in the market now. We're trying to go with the base plus consumption model. Right? You know, and people are used, like you said earlier, they're used to the SaaS model.
Yeah.
Getting a lot of pushback on the variable part of it, because the CFO comes in and says the usual, which is, well, that's a variable cost, I can't control
Yeah,
that, I don't know how
right.
to budget it.
Exactly.
And the question is, what are you seeing customers, how are they starting to think about this? Because I don't think it's practical for anybody to sell Gen
Well,
AI product that consumes tokens
yeah.
at a fixed price.
I mean, the old usage-based model, which is what I used to say, is, you know, your dad's phone bill, right? You used to get like
By the
the
minute.
long-distance calls.
Right, yeah.
Exactly.
You know, everyone hates that. When I was product manager, I was no way I was ever gonna charge for usage. I wanted usage. More usage is great. That's adoption, you know? That was my KPI. But there are a lot of ways of structuring that pricing to make it more predictable for the CFO. So things like, you know, tokens and credits were based on the tier you are. You get so many tokens that sort of match what the usage pattern is, and then as that goes up, you could buy more and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different ways to skin that cat, and I would recommend that there's a great resource called Growth Unhinged. It's a site that a guy named Kyle Poyer does, and he talks about all these different ways of, you know, doing different types of usage-based pricing. There's another site called Good, Better, Best, another pricing site. And what's nice about this is that these are changing every week. Every week if you go to some of these sites, you'll see that this company has just adopted this company's adopted that. But it's basically to do that.
No, but I think the packaging is the easier part.
Yeah.
Love being a product manager, you package anything you want.
Yeah.
Price it any way you want, but what are you seeing right now with customers? Because I think what's happening, what we're seeing is, there's this hold off from the customers because they don't know how to characterize it, so they won't buy.
Yeah.
And are you seeing what do you see customer reaction to these kinds of
I think a lot of it is how it's communicate, how that pricing or packaging process is communicated. Okay, because change is a tough thing, but the reality is, you know, if you're having higher cost of service, you have to charge for it, or you can't stay in business. Period. End stop. And so I'm not saying it's an easy conversation, but it's a necessary conversation.
So I can share with you an experience. This was a Fortune 100 I worked for that did prices. This is before AI, but they carried it forward. So they would use before the product is installed, they would choose a metric that there was historical data on, and they would pin it for the first year based on that historical metric. So in this case, it was the number of discharges and outpatient visits of a hospital. Okay, so we know that it's reported every year to CMS, and you could do that. And so you could say to the CFO, this isn't going to fluctuate on you every month like our old phone bills were. You're going to know what it is for this year. And I found they would rather pay a bit more and get that predictability in the first year, and then we say, okay, then each year we reset, and it's going to be now on the metric of your actual utilization last year. And what we found at this company over time is some companies, their next year, their volume was higher than we predicted. Others were lower, but in all, for us, it averaged out.
Yeah.
Some were higher, some were lower, but we did it, you know, based on last year's utilization numbers. Does that make sense? And rather than having something floating every month or week or use case.
Or have an unlimited plan, but really make sure you do your economics on that first, right?
That's scarier.
Isn't that
Yeah.
gonna be really hard with AI though, when you don't have an understanding or a baseline to go off of? So if somebody's
It is
never
harder.
used that before, giving a predictable chunk,
Yeah.
it's not like counting the number of beds. It's like your hospital's only so big. I can feel good about that.
A few years ago, I was working with a company called Blue Sky that helped companies manage their snowflake spend.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where that first started, right? Like some stupid queries would run for 48 hours and nobody would know what the hell they are. And next thing you know, it's like the kid who called their grandma in California and left the phone.
Yeah.
They were horrible situations, and yeah, I mean there's a huge need and opportunity for that to manage that.
So technically we're at time, but I think I hope you guys are enjoying this conversation. two different ways we could go about this. If there's more audience questions, happy to take them. Otherwise, I have a few questions I can ask you guys if you wanna do that, so. But really, this is all for you all, so.
Good question.
Okay.
So we're in a B2B space that is stagnant, hasn't seen any innovation in a while. This is liftgate, so we build a liftgate that's much more reliable, allows our customers to add an extra stop in their routes when they're delivering something every day. This is, I think companies like Coke and Pepsi that are delivering products to gasoline stations, convenience stores, CVS, so on and so forth. Trying to figure out how to get to a model that would either capture KPI or be a value-based model, because our product is roughly 50% more expensive. So we're selling at 18,000, we're selling at 29,000. I'm wondering if you have any ideas on how to do that. So even though that's a model we figured out for autonomous farm motion, I'm not able to figure it out for this particular product.
Yeah, I mean, I would be looking at, you know, you said you can do what, one extra stop a day or a different, additional stops?
An additional stop.
One additional stop. So, you know, what is the value of revenue and cost of labor for that one additional
$300 to
stop?
$1,200 more per day.
Right, I mean, right, and
So-
then your lift gate gets amortized because it's a capital purchase over, what, 7 years typically?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so I'm not good, I need to go to my ChatGPT or Excel to do the ROI, but that would be the conversation I would be having.
Yeah, so I can have that value-based conversation, but it's a big risk for them, right? The capital investment up front, the capital purchase, they don't wanna pay $10,000 more for this product, and so how would we?
But
I
if
wonder
it gives them the extra stop, if it's not a lift gate that's, if there are other lift gates that also give an extra stop, then
Yeah.
you don't, okay, well,
But
then
then
let's
you
see
might
what's going
wanna
on.
we
also consider how to charge it as an operational
We
expense.
can,
Well,
we
there's
can,
leasing
we can
or-
talk, we can
yeah.
talk
Leasing.
offline, I mean, there's probably different ways you could do it. Subscription model, maybe, one way of doing it.
It's at least effective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's,
I don't know if your pricing is right, but you've got the information to back into it.
It's cost-based pricing right now.
yeah,
We're starting.
but it's an interesting problem, I love these types of problems, just like what, Neil was saying about jobs to be done.
Yeah.
There's a job to be done there, and I would probably wanna explore a little further to see if there's more jobs that this thing is doing. There may be other value in this, there may be other things that, oh, maybe injuries get caused, or goods get damaged, or, you know, once you start brainstorming around what this thing does, you could make that a better thing. I know that there are issues with parking and stuff, with trucks and holding up traffic and fines and stuff like that. If this speeds up that process, you can, so there's a lot of reasons, and I think the way you go at it is you find out who is the influencer in that buying decision, you each give them a reason to why they wanna buy this thing. Okay, as opposed to, it's the whole experience of using it, not just, hey, this is liftgate A costs this, and liftgate, that's like going to Home Depot and trying to
Yes.
figure out which trash bag you want to buy. This is different, this is more like the experience of that, which is a job to be done, so.
I'd also be curious as to like what keeps the buyer up at night. Like, is this the reason that they don't wanna spend more here because they have to spend more money there? And so that additional cost, even if it pays for itself, isn't worth the time and effort up front because they have this other large cost going on that you're not aware of because you're focused on.
It could be as simple as saying, I don't have to buy as many trucks every year.
Yes.
I mean, that's- Yeah.
But-
Sorry, just to build on what you said, I think it's also maybe what is the buyer's driver? It may not even be a cost-based driver at all. It might be a fear-based driver that I don't want to look bad.
Yes.
And,
I
or,
wanna buy the idea, yes.
yeah, exactly. And so it's a question of what is their perception of risk and understanding their mental models, their drivers, their fears, the emotional aspect, and then figuring out how do you tap into that and provide, make this less risky, right? It may not be about the value and the price of it at all. It might be, you know, make this super easy to throw out. If you don't like it, you know, you can get rid of it 2 days from now. And whatever would reduce that risk and address their mental model is kind of what you're running.
I mean, it seems to me that pricing, I agree with you, like, how many days a year is a truck on the road?
How many what?
How many days a year is a truck on the road? 365
Yeah.
Okay, so you said $300 a stop, times 300 days, $90,000 per truck, right? So it seems like, and your premium is 10% of that, right? So it seems like it's not a pricing problem, there's something else is the pricing should be an easy spin.
Yeah, maybe you're not going, I'm sure you've done the proper customer segmentation, also maybe you're not going after the right buyer, because it seems like you have a value prop.
Yep.
And you have like, if that messaging is not landing, maybe you have to identify your actual champion,
Okay.
who's your detractor,
Then I
and
think
try to
price-
like focus more on going after the
If
champion.
anything, your price is too low, right? I mean,
Value-based pricing.
Yeah, this is awesome, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, I really appreciate it.
This is
All right.
great. Any other questions? 'Cause actually, we're over time, so I'm happy to give you guys a break before our next session at 11:30. You guys can obviously continue the conversation or talk to any of the panelists or myself if you want to chat about anything specific. Any other burning questions that we want to?
It's not a burden, but there's, going back to the question around like new skill sets we need to develop, there's also been talk around evaluating, like the PMs need to be good at evals, like evaluating AI products, both as buyers of AI products and then builders of AI products.
Yeah.
Which for me sounds very similar to if you've ever done like a build buy analysis of any other piece of software. I don't see why that would be different, but I don't know if you've heard that there's this unique skill set that you need to develop to specifically evaluate AI products if you're on the buyer side or if you're on the builder side.
Well, precision is one of the things you're always gonna, and that's not always the case in other types of products, but it is always the case with AIs to measure precision.
I just want to be clear. Are we talking about
Yeah, go ahead.
evals of AI agentic or AI products? Are we talking about how does one evaluate different AI products if you're thinking about purchasing?
What's the difference between what you just asked?
So, for
Did I
example,
wanna
like-
say evals of AI products?
Yeah, like for example, we're building an AI triage tool for non-emergency calls, right?
Right.
And so the question is, how do we evaluate the quality of the responses that the callers are getting?
Right,
That-
but this is on the builder side, right? So if I'm a buyer of a
Yeah.
triage tool for like, I don't know if you said triaging patients. right?
No, that's for emergency calls.
Right, so if
For
you're buying-
non-emergency calls that are going to emergency centers. which-
I think that there's both perspectives, the builder and then the buyer perspective.
Right.
Even if you're sitting on product on the buyer side.
Mhm.
So if I'm buying a tool, for example, that triages calls or triages, I was thinking, I'm in healthcare, so triaging patients.
Yeah.
As a buyer, it's a black box to you. So for you to evaluate, you need to generate test cases
Mhm.
or like case generation, which means you need to build your own case runner. How do you go about building case runner? What are the benchmarks or metrics you need to be looking for to evaluate? And I think the same applies. if you're
Then we're
building-
talking about the same kind of
Okay.
evals. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm curious, David, do you have any thoughts around evals? Have you done anything specifically?
Not specifically in buying an AI product, I mean, in terms of presenting it to customers, it's like the same way that we're typically using in healthcare enterprise software. They wanna hear, how did someone else use it, what were the results they got? And
Yeah,
we'll
I
buy based
agree.
on that.
I think from our perspective, what we're doing is we have a group of early access customers that we're building products with. And so essentially then, we say, okay, like here's the output that it got. Now help us rate it on how correct the response was the tone appropriate, did it help resolve the issue? And then you start to like create a labeled data set, right? Like you would in machine learning, that then trains another AI agent whose job is then to evaluate the responses of your generative tool, right? And so, I mean, there's literally courses and
Yeah.
companies that specialize in this, like, but I mean, I don't know if that's not a complete answer to your question.
In the same way you may ask though, like, if you're buying a solution, what's your, like, SLA, and what's your uptime? I do think that there are different parts of an LLM or Gen AI that you may be interested in and understanding. So you may really care about precision, or you may really care about trustworthiness. It depends on the field that you're in, and so
Or
on and so forth,
latency,
or agency,
right.
or
tone.
exactly.
or-
And so when somebody's measuring the success of their AI solution, they will have their own evaluation set, and so maybe that is, I have not tried to buy one, but it might be something that you would want to understand is how are they evaluating those different components
Mhm.
of their evaluation set, because they may be anchored more towards precision versus latency, and you may need something that is fast.
And it kind of goes back again to this customer discovery and like understanding the jobs to be done and get a really deep sense of like, one of the things that I'm trying to think about is how are my customers measuring success, or how are the buyers of my products being evaluated, right? What are the KPIs that they're reporting to the people they're accountable for? And then does my tools or solutions help them drive the KPIs that are gonna make them more effective in their role? Which then is good for me, because if I wanna upsell them on a new product or service, they can make the case and say, hey, we've actually, our call containment rate has improved 25%. Like, we wanna get additional budget to implement this other geofencing tool that will help us deal with highway crashes or wildfires or whatnot.
So what you're basically saying is, and this is something that I learned from Clay Christensen, is the secret to innovation, successful innovation, is helping your customers add more value to their customers.
Right.
So if your innovation does that, then you're on the right track.
Right.
If you can't make that link between what you're doing and how your customers add value to their customers, then what are you doing?
Right. So if I had to summarize, I would say that like, in the age of AI, creating value still matters, right?
Yeah.
You can't just use technology for technology's sake and say, hey, we have AI, and like, you know, build solutions to social problems. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this discussion. It
Thank
wasn't
you.
the same old about AI.
Thank you, guys.
We
Thank
heard
you.
a lot.
Great. Appreciate it.
And happy to give you guys maybe about 15 minutes. I'm getting a call.